All right, g'day. So this is my 4.5 pound Thor Arkiva. Um, I was really excited to find this axe. They're such sexy looking axes. These were made in the town of Arkiva in Sweden. I think the company started out in 1909 and merged with Thor Axe Factory in 1912, kind of kept going to the 1920s. And then sometime after that, they sort of folded and then at least the name was bought up by Hults Bruk. Um, they were available in Australia, I think, like during the 1920s, as best I can figure out. At least the Tasmanian patterns one were. I remember coming across this photo one day from Powelltown in the Yarra Ranges from around 1946, and it showed this dude way up some monstrous mountain ash starting to remove the bark with an axe. And I was just like, wow, that looks hardcore. And I remember at the time, the axe forum I was on, there was a bit of discussion um, from people that were in the know that seemed to be the consensus that he was swinging a Thor Akiva. And I thought, that looks like a cool axe. And the more I kind of looked into it and the history of Akiva axes, the more it appealed to me. And I also sort of realized, like, back in the day when these Thor Akiva were in productions during the 1910s and 1920s, most Australian axemen would have been swinging plums. So it would have been quite the discerning buyer that sought out the Swedish made Thor Akiva, and they don't seem to be very common. So um, the rarity of them, the sort of sexy profile, and just the history has really appealed to me. This might be on its original handle. There was a little bit of overstrike there that I've kind of started to tidy up. I've taken the old wedge out, so it's detachable now. I just want to go through the build process, putting a new edge on it, cleaning up the handle, rehanging it, try and make it a nice, quick little video. There's a few interesting things with this axe. I mean, the handle, it's hickory. I don't know, it doesn't look like any sort of replacement handle. I've never seen one like this, so I'm guessing it could be the original one. Um, it has probably got the worst grain orientation that I've ever seen on axe handle. It's like fully horizontal. Um, I'm guessing, it's nearly 100 years old. So if this is the original handle, it's held up pretty well. So I'm going to clean it up, use it, see what happens. I know I've seen a few videos and people talking about how, if you make a handle or rivet from a log, you're going to end up often with this sort of grain orientation. And in certain situations, it actually may not be quite as strong as having vertical orientation, but it can make for a nicer, flexier handle. So I don't know. Let's see if it works. If it breaks, I guess I'll just put a new handle on it.
The bit on these is huge. It's kind of borderline racing axe. This one, it's like coming up to, it's right on about 150 mil, just under 6 inches. Pole is about 90 or so. That's pretty normal. And there it's about just over 180. So I just want to check the radius. So, right. So that's pretty good. do much to that.
All right on 4 pound 8 ounces. What was I expecting? It's made in Sweden.
Alright, that's looking pretty good after a combination of push filing and draw filing. Kind of find both might be required to kind of get a nice flat bevel all the way across. So I'll start on the other side now and begin to check the angle, trying to get it to about 20 if I can. All right, so now finished all the filing, got a pretty good primary bevel. We started out, I don't know, it was about sort of 25 degrees or so. So got my little engineered for axeman jig here, a little gauge. So I've got it, yeah, it's good sort of solid 20 most of the way along. I'm gonna try and get it right in the middle as best I can and make sure that the the bevel goes all the way along the edge of the gauge. So it's pretty good. Fine 20 seems to be a safe kind of angle for the bevel that cuts deep but it's not too fragile. Seems to work well on a lot of Australian timbers. Alright, so now that I've got that primary bevel filed in pretty well down at about 20 degrees, I like to sort of smooth it off, and I kind of do it a bit differently every time, but I'm sort of settling on using, I like this is just a cheap little aluminium oxide oil stone. Just kind of get in there with that, and that sort of really starts to get all those file gouges and things out. So use that, and later I might just sort of use like some wet and dry sandpaper and just sort of continue sort of buffing it down till I get a nice sort of finish. And I like to sort of blend it in to the main part of the bit. And then after that, that's when I'll use the ceramic whetstones just to put the little micro-bevel on. They seem to work really well for that. So that's the process from now. Alright, so I think I'm pretty much done with the sort of sanding and stoning. It's looking pretty good. I mean, there's a few kind of deeper scratches in there, a couple bits here, and I mean, I could spend another day stoning them out, but you know, I think it's going to chop pretty well regardless, and they'll probably wear out at some point soon anyway. And I kind of like, you know, where you can see some of the process involved. Makes you appreciate a good bevel and a bit of a memory of all the effort you put into getting it. Yeah, it looks pretty good. All right, so now I'm going to start putting micro bevel on. I commenced the whole process with this 300 grit ceramic whetstone. Just kind of work over it like that, making sure the angle's about half that of the, well, you know, sort of double that of the main bevel. Usually ends up about sort of 25 degrees or so. Just work it in like that for a bit. Alright, see the nice little micro bevel we got there now. That looks good. So to strop that micro bevel, I just like using this Powermatic honing compound. I put a bit on my paddle on this side, strop it in, and then work over it with the clean leather. That works pretty well. All right, not too hard, don't want to overdo it. I mean, the main thing I'm trying to do is get that micro bevel nice and sharp. It's what does the initial cut. The main thing that helps with the actual chopping is that main bevel and the overall geometry of the cheeks once it goes in. This is just the cutting edge, so to speak. So I'm not too worried about trying to get a super duper mirror finish on the whole thing, because it's going to get messy as soon as I start chopping, but might as well get it sharp on that micro bevel to start with. Again, that'll go through Aussie hardwoods. Alright, so it's a bit of a strange fit. There's this big kind of bulge on the shoulder, which we're going to thin down a bit. There's still a bit of a gap here, so I really want to bring it down probably about 10 mil or so. That'll lift the top up as well.
Slowly getting there, closing that gap up pretty well. Moving it down the shoulder. Should have a nice bit protruding above the eye, which will be good. Slowly is the trick at this point. Don't get too excited. Well, I've been slowly creeping my way down the handle. I think it's about as far as I'm going to take it. There's not much shoulder left there. It's nice and tight. There's a tiny little gap just in here, but I think it's kind of solidly in there. It's a weird shaped eye. It sort of broadens at the base, then narrows, and then widens again. Anyway, wedge time. So I've been umming and ahhing what I'm going to use for the wedge, and I've decided I'm going to go with a piece of Plunkett mallee, Eucalyptus curtisii. I used this on the 3.5 pound Thor Axe, and it looked really nice. I mean, it's got good growth lines in there. It seemed to deform as it went in, so it should be good. So I've gone from wood glue to a bit of oil, no oil, and now going with drippling glycol. So 20%, and most of it's water. So this helps the wood expand once it comes into contact with other bits of wood. So it's what cabinet makers use for dovetail joints and things. I found it works really well for axe wedges, and it's cheap and it smells good. This is the the carrier for incense. Well, it doesn't actually smell at all because it doesn't have any incense oil in it, but it's non-toxic and does the trick. So that's what I'm going to use. So just going to get a bit of this on the wedge. That'll be enough when it goes in. Going in pretty well. Okay, I might just trim that. Give it a bit more bash at the back. Alright, that is a good hang. It's in there. That is in there. I like it. Just going to tidy up around the edges and then trim. I think we've done good. Whew. Always nerve-wracking. liking how that's come out. All right, so I've let this sit for a week while I've been away. The wedge has really expanded nicely. It looks really good. There's still a bit of moisture coming through from the drippling glycol, so I'm not going to oil it yet until that's gone. I don't want to seal the moisture in, but I'm going to do a little bit more work on the handle. So I think this area coming up into the head's good, but and the shaft is nice. I might just sort of clean it up so it's all the same finish once I oil it, but I might take a little bit, particularly here, or maybe there, I think, just to give it a bit more definition around the palm swell. But otherwise it's a good handle, apart from the funky grain, but let's just trust that that's going to be okay. Maybe it'll be nice and flexy. Maybe it'll break the first time I use it. We'll only find out if we continue. Most of the handles pretty good in terms of that grain orientation issue that we got, except up here there's a bit of run out coming into the shoulder, and that's a classic spot for handles to break, so I hope that's okay. Otherwise, looks pretty good. And I love sanding hickory. It's such a beautiful wood. It's coming up really nice. Onwards. Probably give it a quick run over with some 120 grit, but that's probably about as fine as I'll go. Don't want to make it too slippery. All right, time to oil. So I like to use tongue oil. It's all natural, non-toxic. Doesn't matter if you get it on your hands when you're doing it. Takes a while to sort of polymerize and set, so, and you got to put, probably about half a dozen coats on before it's all good. But we got time, so just squirt it on with this thing. All right, that is looking good. So always make sure I wipe any excess off. Otherwise, it kind of goes a bit crusty. And I'll just leave that for 24 hours and do it again for a week or so until it's sort of built up. All right, so time to make a sheath for this. Pretty much all done on the axe part of things, that is. So this sheath, I'm going to go black. I think the Thor Arkivas were originally painted black, and I've done a black sheath for the little 3.5 pound one here. So I'll do one the same that matches, and I'll have a bit of a set. So let's get to it. So this is 3.5 mil veg tan. Shoulder strap. I find it's nice and thick, really durable. Not the easiest leather to work with because it's so thick, but it makes a nice sheath. So before we get into that, I'm going to trace the head, get the template sorted out, and then I'll trace it onto the leather. So first just need an outline of the part of the axe that's going to get the sheath over it. So something like that. So probably want it to come to about there. Usually better to start off with more, can take it away rather than less. All right, things are getting a bit more technical now, so I'm going to shift to a slightly more technical pencil. This is my favorite Shackleton pencil. You can only get these in Antarctica. I got a set of 10 Ernst Shackleton pencils from Port Lockroy on the Antarctic Peninsula, and they all come with awesome little Shackleton quotes. This one says, "Difficulties are just things to overcome, after all. I wonder how many days on the pack ice it took Shackleton to figure out that one." I don't think this sheath is going to be too difficult. Either way, we will overcome it. So I usually go with a margin of about 10 mil around the axe head. So I just kind of do a few marks like that. Doesn't have to be exactly right because we haven't even moved to the leather yet. And then I go a little bit thicker down here, where I'm going to have a bit more leather, so to about 1.5, and then kind of work down to 1 centimetre or 10 mil. I'll thicken this part of the welt up a bit just to give it a snugger fit. So I kind of make the flappy bit, at least to start with, much bigger than I think it's going to need to be, because I'll get the shape right once we've cut it out. It's going to kind of be something about like that, I think. Make it really big. All right, so there's the basic stencil. So, template, just to sort of see what it's going to look like. The leather's obviously not going to fold as easily as the paper. It's a bit thicker, but still going to give us a pretty good idea. So probably want to go about there. And I'd say to start with, let's just go for about somewhere around here. All right, so I think that'll look pretty good. It's probably a little bit bigger than it needs to be, but that's good. We can always trim the leather. I love this little Osborne and Co. saddlery round knife, or half moon, I don't know what they're called. I find this is great on the thick leather. Cuts through it really well. Just give it a quick strop. This is good to get the kind of grime off, all the oils in the leather. All right, so I got the welt template position there. Now, with my technical pen from the dentist, I'll trace that on. So now you can kind of see where the axe should sit. All right, so I can pretty much see how the axe is going to sit in the sheath. And that's how that bit's going to fold over. So now I've got to get the front piece. Get that lined up. It's going to go about there. So that's the front. It'll sit over like that, more or less. Now I've got to cut out the welt. Alright, so before I dye any of that leather, I'm going to use an edge beveler. I like to go with this one. It's number 4. Trim those edges down. Okay, good to get initials in there before the dye goes in. That way it'll all sink in nicely. Alright, so the good thing about using natural veg tan is you can dye it whatever color you want. So I like to do all my sheaths roughly the same color as what the axe is or may have been when it was first produced. So I'm going to go black for this Thor Axe. These dyes from Cobblestone, they're made in southeast Queensland, I think. They're really good. I like them. Thanks, East Coast Leather and Cobblestone. I'm probably only going to need to do 2 coats max with black. It's always good to do the dye before any gluing, as the dye doesn't work on glued surfaces. Alright, so that dye is soaked in and dried nicely. So now just got to glue the main welt on. So I'll rough that surface up before I glue it. So I just use water-based leather glue. Seems to work really well. Just got to let it get tacky and then can join each of the pieces. Just use these little scraps to create a nice even surface, and then best I can and just weigh it down with this thing. Alright, so cut out 3 little pieces that I'll glue together like that to create the welt down the bottom. Alright, so that glue is properly set now. There you go, got that bottom welt there. So now I just got to shape that down to the angle of the axe. Now I just got to glue the front piece on like that. Crazy set of clamps holding it together. Maybe one more. All difficulties with axe sheaths and leather can be overcome with clamps. Alright, left the clamps on overnight, so the glue should have set. Let's see how it looks. Alright, that's good. Nice and snug. Now, I might just trim part of that flap and then we'll shape the edges. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Nice and rounded on the corners. I'll just clean it up a little bit with a file and then bevel those edges. Re-dye those sections that have been ground down, and then we'll be good to go with stitching. All right, so for the stitching, I first sort of run around where I want to do it with this Saddle Maker's grooving tool. I usually go about 10 mil in from the edge, and then when I finish with that, I'll use a stitching spacer to work out where the holes need to be. I usually just mark the spots with a texter so I can see where they are when I'm doing the drilling. Makes it a bit easier. All right, so to get the holes in for the stitching, I use a drill press, but not just any drill press. This is one that I inherited from my dad. He's taken a 1950s Sher dual speed Powermatic drill. It's like, aluminium cast frame. These are one of the first sort of DIY power tools produced in Australia down in Melbourne at Sher's big factory down there. Now he's taken one of those and he's mounted it on this. It's a contraption, but it works. It's just like nuts and bolts, bits of steel, springs, all sorts of things. He was really good at upcycling and reusing things and coming up with crazy inventions like this. So for what I do, this is perfect, and there's no way I'd trade this in for anything else. All right, so all the holes are in. Spacing's pretty good. Just tidy that up and then we can start stitching. All right, so for stitching, I just use white nylon thread most of the time. I like it because you can melt it at the end when you're done. Pair of scissors, a couple of needles. All right, so I just use basic saddle stitch. But something that has revolutionized stitching for me is this stitching pony. Thanks to my brother-in-law, Aiden. All right, that's all done. Now we just got to see how well it all fits after all that work. Yes. That's solid. Looks good. Excellent. All right, the only thing left to do now is to seal the edges with some edge finisher and then burnish those edges and condition all the leather. I know a lot of people probably wouldn't bother doing this, but it's such a simple step and it makes such a difference to the final finish. It's really good. I like it when it gets all nice and smoothed off like that. I think it's worth it. Now just a bit of saddle conditioner to finish the whole thing off. To really bring out the colour as well. All right, so that is a wrap on the 4.5 pound Thor Arkiva. Finished off the sheath last night. It's looking good, and the axe, I love it. I'm really happy with how this has come out. These are such a sexy looking axe, such a good profile, the really wide cutting bit, classic Tasmanian, nice and thick through the cheeks, slightly convex, not too much and not too big a pole. I pretty much got it spot on. Very, very happy with this and like the look of it. Can't wait to give it a go. I just hope that the handle holds up with that crazy grain orientation. Matt Keevil, I hope you're right about some of these older handles, and it is, I'm really optimistic it's going to be nice and flexy. I've been doing a little bit more research into the history of Thor Arkiva, particularly this model. You know, as I mentioned earlier, the company started out in the town of Arkiva in 1909 and then merged with the Thor Axe Factory in 1912. And production of Thor Arkiva, which I'm assuming is the production line associated with this particular stamp, continued until 1922 when that merger dissolved, and it was picked up again by the Arvika Tool Factory in 1923 and continued through until the early 30s when the factory moved. The Arkiva brand continued under Hults Bruk. So even though there are later model Arkivas, I'm pretty sure these ones, this particular Tasmanian pattern with that stamp, must have been produced between 1912 and 1922. So I'm going to say early 1920s maybe for these arriving in Australia, and then they probably persisted on the market in Australia through the 1920s, but this particular model, I reckon that's its age. If anyone knows any more, any Swedes out there, please correct me, but I got all that information from the Arkiva Photographic Town Archive, so I'm hoping that's pretty good. All right, put the sheath on and put it on the wall, waiting for a tree.